welcome everyone to the next installment in our Careers Beyond Academia series. So we had the last one end of last year, which was on non-linear career pathways, and now we're going to explore engagement and knowledge exchange. And we're joined by four really fantastic speakers. So Kadidia Thiero from the Center for Developing Leadership in Science, the University of California, Los Angeles, in the USA. Andrea Padilla from the UK Collaborative on Development Research in the UK, Ruth Kirk from the University of Sheffield, also in the UK, and Stewart Ibarra from the Inter-American Institute for Global Change Institute in Panama. And we're really excited to have all of you in the audience here today too. So a bit about what to expect during today's event. So we'll have a short event overview for around 5 minutes, panelist introductions, for about 15 minutes, followed by a moderated panel discussion, the breakout session where you'll be able to meet panelists individually in your own breakout room and go and talk with them and ask them questions. And then we'll close the event at 5:30 UTC. And a small disclaimer, so this is an Earth Science Women's Network hosted event with speakers from different organisations. A bit of housekeeping, so please remember to abide by the Earth Science Women's Network Code of Conduct. So you should all have signed this when you registered. If you somehow found yourself here without having signed that, please take a moment to go to our website and have a look. All aspects of this event except the breakout sessions are being recorded for those who can't join us live. You'll notice that you're all called ESWN event attendee. You can stay anonymous in that way if you would like to, or you can rename yourself with your actual name. This event is fully closed captioned, and you can use the CC button at the bottom of your screen to show or hide the captions. If you hide these for you, it will only hide it for you and not the whole event. And if you want to show them again, same situation. You'll be muted for the duration of the event. If you find that you can unmute yourself, please remember not to, so that we maintain a nice quiet environment for our speakers. You can send your questions to our questions host. So please remember to send your questions through to the questions host. If you have any thoughts in the chat, remember that we're all virtual. So please remember to share those in the chat as the event progresses. If you have any tech issues, also remember to send them to the questions host through the chat. So a bit about the Earth Science Women's Network, if you haven't come across this before. So the Earth Science Women's Network is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing diversity across the geosciences, with an emphasis on creating and supporting a nurturing community, working for cultural change to eliminate barriers to a diverse scientific workforce, and empowering scientists through professional development. And it's run by a volunteer board and associate board of directors, a number of whom are here today. So a bit about what will be covered in today's webinar. So we'll have knowledge exchange. So this is a two-way exchange of information, expertise, and capabilities between different groups. For example, higher education institutions and external partners. So businesses, government bodies, nonprofits, indigenous communities. It creates social, cultural, and economic benefits, moves products from the lab/office into the real world, includes activities like research commercialization, consultancy, collaborative research, and policy advising. And there is a focus on co-creation and mutual benefit for such places as academic institutions and external partners. Engagement, we're defining for this event as meaningful interactions between and/or amongst individuals or communities to create positive outcomes for all involved. For example, interacting, working, and co-creating with local communities to foster connection, build trust, and ensure community needs are taken into account and built into a project before decisions are made. And whilst different, they both require a good understanding of partnership working and how to build meaningful relationships for fruitful outcomes. There's lots of different types of roles that you can go into, because your earth science background can take you to so many different places and allow you to do this kind of work. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce our panelists, so Kadidia, Andrea, Ruth, and Anna, and I'll let them introduce themselves in turn.
Right, so this is me, right? Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea. I was thinking about this sort of personal introduction and how to describe my career so far, and I'd say it's looked a lot more like a web than a regular career ladder. You can see there my sort of overall profile, but I'll just talk you through what that looks like. And I mean, I say it's looked like a web because I probably had 3 or 4 different roles during my first 5 years in my career. I never really planned to end up working in engagement type of roles. It's really been a mix of curiosity, timing, I think, and a passion for connecting people, sectors, and ideas. And that's really how I see myself now, as someone who sort of builds these bridges. So early on, I worked in various NGOs, including an international humanitarian NGO. They asked me to design and deliver a knowledge management strategy, which all sounded very impressive, especially because I was almost straight out of uni until I realized I first needed to Google what knowledge management was. So as you can imagine, a bit of a bumpy road and loads of learning there. But ultimately, it really sparked something. I kind of became very, very intrigued and interested by how sharing knowledge could make organizations more effective, not only within the staff of the organization, but by better engaging with the communities that they connect with. So in the case of this NGO, it was with the migrants they were serving, some other marginalized communities like farmers, academic institutions, and advocacy organizations. So after that, I joined the Colombian Presidential Agency for International Cooperation, and I work with different UN agencies, with governments, again, with academia and NGOs. And my role really was about coordinating South-South cooperation with China specifically and several African countries. And that position was quite aligned with my academic background, so fortunately, less Googling there. That experience really taught me how complex partnerships are, but also how powerful they can be when there's a shared goal and genuine collaboration across people who have different backgrounds and who can bring different perspectives. I then moved in the UK to the UK, and I joined a university as a research assistant. And I did that while I was completing my master's in sustainable development. And that's really where I felt connected with the value of research, especially with how interdisciplinary approaches can tackle big, messy, and complex problems like sustainability or like inequality. And fast forward today, I now work at UKCDR. I am a senior research and policy officer, and in my role, I support UK research funders by providing them with evidence-based insights to help them make better decisions. I think this is the easiest way to put it. And in this role, I found I very much enjoy seeing how research can actually influence policy and practice, and kind of getting that close look of how very interesting scientific knowledge transform into actionable insights. So just to say that this couple of last positions were both roles I found online, did the whole CV, cover letter, interview application, so pretty standard. But just to finalize my introduction, and if there's one thing I'd like to leave you with and to talk more about in the breakout room is that careers don't always come in the shape of a ladder, and they don't really have to be kind of linear to be the right one. For me, it was somewhat following of a sort of quiet compass in me that led me to this space of bridge building. And it's something I find very, very fulfilling as a career path. So thanks, and looking forward to engaging with the other panelists and all the participants in the room.
Hey everybody, good afternoon, good morning. Ana Stewart Ibarra here from the Inter-American Institute for Global Change Research. I'm based in Panama, so here in the Americas. I loved the comment that Andrea just made about, careers not being a ladder. My career's certainly not been a ladder. I think of it more as like a winding river, and moving forward, always kind of being pulled, sometimes gently, sometimes turbulently, but towards, that next bend in the river. So in my current role, I serve as the executive director of the IAI, and we are an intergovernmental organization serving 19 countries across the Americas. So I just respond directly and work for our governments. As the executive director, we work directly. We have our own conference of the parties and we work with government representatives. And our mission is to support science by funding and training and disseminating science on global environmental change issues so that our countries, our member states, have the best available knowledge and tools. The II has been around for 33 years, so we emerged in the early 90s at the same time as a wave of environmental multilateralism. And it's really, II has become an instrument of science diplomacy to foster collaboration across member states and the exchange of knowledge, scientific knowledge, and science that's applied for solutions to address the most pressing issues in the region. Before being the executive director, I was the scientific director of the II. And in my previous life, I was also an academic researcher. I was at a Center for Global Health, and I was running an international research program focused on vector-borne diseases and climate and health and social vulnerability based in southern coastal Ecuador. And my family is also Ecuadorian. I'm from the US and also have Ecuadorian background. And so it was very, very meaningful for me to spend about 12 years doing collaborative research in partnership with the Ministry of Health, with the National Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, local communities, and a network of Ecuadorian and international universities to begin to address the underlying climate and social drivers of dengue fever transmission at that time. And for those who are familiar with dengue, you'll know that today it's one of the #1 public health threats, certainly one of the #1 infectious disease public health threats in Latin America and the Caribbean and in the tropics worldwide. So my background is in ecology and environmental science. I then went into the space of public health and global health research, and now I'm in this intergovernmental science policy and science diplomacy space. And really, the common thread through all of that is partnerships. And I have a real passion for focusing on equitable partnerships and transforming science now that I'm in a position where I can work within the system and sort of change the incentive structures, transforming how we fund, how we support, and how we train science so that we can address colonial legacies, do science in ways that is different, meaningful, and equitable to have a greatest possible outcome to address these huge issues that we face as humanity. So this really is a passion of mine that I've sort of seen evolve and carry through the different roles that I've had over the years. And I'm thrilled to be here with you and to learn from everybody. Thanks.
Hi everyone, my name is Ruth and I'm a knowledge exchange manager at the University of Sheffield in the UK, and I'm really enjoying the previous descriptions of careers from the others. My career has also definitely not been a ladder. So I completed an MSci in geoscience at the Royal Holloway University of London back in 2012, and then moved to the University of East Anglia, both in the UK, where I did my PhD in isotopic geochemistry. Whilst I loved research, I didn't necessarily want to stay on as an academic, but at the time I didn't really understand what kind of options there were for kind of more research adjacent careers. So following that, I spent a year as a clinical trial assistant before spending some time in New Zealand working for an online education company. When I returned to the UK, this is really where I got my introduction into what knowledge exchange was. I started working for a company called InPart, which is actually a matchmaking platform that connects industry R&D with university research. I was also doing a little bit of freelance research communication work on the side as well. So I then joined the University of Liverpool as a knowledge exchange communications officer, which was a great way to kind of connect my knowledge exchange experience with my communication skills. And then 2 years ago, I moved to the University of Sheffield, where I'm working as a knowledge exchange manager. So as Matt said, within UK universities, knowledge exchange is this umbrella term for collaborative activities that universities undertake with non-academic partners, and where we see a two-way exchange of ideas and expertise. So this is this kind of space where I'm coming from. You might also hear technology transfer office is mentioned as well within universities. It's quite a common alternative term. So knowledge exchange is often seen as a route to impact, and our aim is to add value through knowledge exchange work, but it also doesn't have to be within like your primary research area. We see really great pieces of knowledge exchange work grow from the application of techniques into brand new areas. So I thought I'd sort of say a little bit about what my day-to-day is as a professional service member of staff within a UK university. So I work with a whole team of people who support researchers who are interested in knowledge exchange. So my role can include helping to create networking spaces where researchers can find partners who might be interested in developing a research project together and setting up conversations. I also support with some of the contractual obligations around partnership research and help academics find sources of funding. And we also take time to look at the bigger picture, looking at where there are new areas of focus coming through from the government or from research funding bodies, and helping our researchers to identify all sorts of potential opportunities.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kadidia Thiero, and I have a slide. Hopefully this little floating thing can get out of our way, which I thought would help explain a little bit about my river-like circuitous route. Is definitely not a ladder like all of my colleagues. I have a lot in common with them as well. I actually started out, I have my family up here, my parents. One was from Jamaica and the other one was from West Africa, Mali. And so I have a lot of international mix and love for global things, and that will include atmospheric science, which that was not my background at all. So that's why I'm saying I definitely had a circuitous route. So I actually started out as a Spanish major in college. I went to Howard University in Washington, D.C., where I was born and raised. My parents met there as immigrants. And I then did Latin American Studies and International Development at Georgetown for graduate school. I was very interested in international development and actually women and gender equity, and went to work for internship organizations, and then for the membership association, which focused on women in the US and women in Africa and business. And so within all of the positions that I've held, because I then went from international development, and I also, one of my first jobs was working at the World Bank for poverty reduction and economic management as a consultant. This just shows that there's multiple ways to build your community and also build your network, which is super, super important, which is ironically the name of this group that's hosting this chat. But networking and mentoring are really important. So I have some mentors on here on this chart. One was, he recently passed last year, Dr. Warren Washington, who was an atmospheric professor and Nobel Science awardee. And that was his wife, who's also a mentor. And then my former director and advisor for a program that I ran in Boulder, Colorado, called the National Science Foundation Significant Opportunities in Atmospheric Research. So within all of the places that I've worked, education, international affairs, and back to or Earth system sciences, I did not get into this field until 2012. And so for me, it's been quite a learning curve, but also a really great education. And none of this could have happened without having networks, having mentors, and having good relationships. So that is really the point that I really want to make. The picture at the bottom left are moms of some friends. I actually went to a all-girls school for high school. And after my mom passed, we had a tea to celebrate mothers. And so a lot of the mothers had different various career tracks, law, international affairs, education. So just having different people in your life that you can come to and also share information. It's important to be a mentee as well as a mentor, which is why I did this little picture to show some of my passions. And most of the positions that I've gotten where I work now, which is the Center for Developing Leadership in Science at UCLA, is through relationships that from conferences and from different events where atmospheric science or geoscience or earth system science is what we are terming the whole field have come. And so I get to work with students, which I love and have always done, and also different communities. So I would say my bent is community engagement, but also I've been a community organizer. I've been trying to make atmospheric science or system science accessible for students, especially historically marginalized or excluded students. And so that has been what I've been doing lately. And so I get to do that, work with communities as well as students, and trying to really change the cultural mindset of science so that more people who want to use it and access it and understand it can. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for such great introductory talks and for telling us so much more about your wonderful careers. So at this point, we're going to move into a panel discussion and Q&A session. So thank you to everyone in the audience for sending us your questions in the registration form. We've got a lot of questions, but we found some common themes, and we've narrowed that down to 4 key themes. All of these leading questions will be pasted into the chat, and there will be an opportunity to ask more questions during the breakout session. So if your question that you submitted isn't answered now or wrapped into an answer, you'll be able to get your questions answered later on today. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Corinne for the panel discussion, as she will be moderating that part. Okay, I wonder if Corinne is having some technical problems, in which case I will take over. So for our first theme, we have, so what is a key difference between knowledge exchange and engagement, and what types of individuals would enjoy knowledge exchange versus engagement? And to start us off with this question, we're going to be joined by Ruth.
Yeah, thank you. This is really interesting, and I'm kind of aware that I'm approaching this very much from a UK university perspective, where I think we have quite a rigid definition of what knowledge exchange is, and we actually had a really interesting, very quick chat right before we got started with this about the term knowledge exchange. So I'll kind of start with my thoughts coming from my perspective here. So I guess what I've discovered over sort of the last couple of years actively supporting my researchers is that there can be a little bit of a blurred line between the terms knowledge exchange and engagement, and they can sometimes end up being used interchangeably a little bit. So when we're talking about knowledge exchange, we're referring to that two-way movement of information and expertise, and it's mutually beneficial to kind of all the partners involved. And I think from what I've seen is sort of engagement can be as simple as talking to a member of the public about your research and just bringing interest, but it can also go so much further than that. And you can start to have conversations between communities and researchers who have initially gone to kind of talk about their research via an kind of an engagement opportunity, but have actually started to have that mutual exchange of information that's suddenly coming back and benefiting the researcher, leading to further opportunities and also benefiting the community. So it's an interesting one. There isn't a kind of, for me, there's never been a clear definition between those two terms. So I've just been joined by my cat because she's heard the sound of my voice. I think the other thing about sort of who would be interested in knowledge exchange and engagement, the way that we support our researchers at the university is that we see both KE and engagement as a route for impact, which is really important for getting research kind of out beyond the walls of the university and bringing it into society where it can have real benefit. So I think any researcher who wants to see what they're doing go beyond the walls of the university, it's a great route for that. So I would say that's those are the kind of people that you'd want to be doing these kinds of activities.
Awesome, thank you so much. Does anyone else on the panel have anything they would like to add?
I can jump in here. So as an intergovernmental organization, I do what my member states tell me. And what our member states have told us is that we focus on transdisciplinary approaches. And this by definition means bringing together different knowledge systems beyond academia. So it means that we recognize and value that there are knowledge holders and knowledge producers in all cultures around the world. And and many of them do not sit in academia. And there's a value for academia, but we also need to construct processes for equitable partnership and funding streams to be able to bring these different knowledge holders, knowledge producers together to co-create solutions. And that's not easy because most traditional universities around the world, be it in the global north or global south, continue to incentivize and focus on traditional sort of academic models for assessment, promotion, and tenure, which often, again, pardon the redundancy, do not provide incentives to partner, especially beyond academia, to develop more collaborative publications, to come out with metrics or products of your research that are not just academic publications. You know, many people are still valued and assessed on their academic publications, if not exclusively, then as a primary metric. And so our work is to train. We do quite a bit of training with the teams that we fund and support because we know that many people lack the skills in doing this. And even though for some people it comes naturally doing partnerships beyond academia, I think we can develop skillful practitioners of partnerships, be it in academia and beyond. And so we spend quite a bit of effort developing transdisciplinary research skills, collaborative partnerships with researchers and non-academic partners who want to be involved in the research or knowledge production processes. These could be people from governments, these could be people in the private sector, it could be from local and indigenous communities. So we create spaces for people to come together as teams, people who already maybe have an inclination to work together, and we help to give them tools and guidance and mentorship as they develop their projects and proposals and ultimately get funding to be able to implement their projects in the real world. So the whole process of co-creation has been identified as our member states in Latin America and the Caribbean and really across the Americas, because our member states also include Canada, the US, and Mexico, the focus on transdisciplinary approaches as what they see as, and Ruth mentioned this, as sort of one of the most, the quickest routes, or right now one of the places where they most want us to focus on and invest in to be able to get to actionable solutions to address these massive challenges that we're facing around global environmental challenges like climate change, biodiversity loss, changes to our oceans.
So thank you. Anyone else on the panel would like to add anything?
I can build on that, and I definitely agree and resonate with what Ruth was saying about this type of careers or positions being a route for impact, and also what Anna was mentioning about this kind of change in the research culture. I would say, from my perspective and my position, I've seen both sort of like a, I don't know, kind of step one, step two process with first any academic institutions looking beyond specific disciplinary silos and thinking about more interdisciplinary kind of research. And then now we're moving beyond that and understanding the complexity, of course, but also the benefits of looking and going through different routes by merging and combining different disciplines, and now also looking into this transdisciplinary arena, which is this connection with other societal actors. I think one thing that strikes me is that more and more from where I'm standing and the way I hear what funders are finding valuable is the fact that they see that embedding these principles in their grants, in the research calls, in the incentives is getting sort of more and more traction. They see the benefits of it. And part of what I do in my day-to-day role is gathering the key lessons of major programs, you know, looking at the end of the program, what worked well, what didn't, why did it work the way it did. And more we see that these two elements, the interdisciplinarity and the transdisciplinarity, score quite high in the way that we actually achieve impact and kind of this sort of real life impact, so impact beyond academia. And I'm thinking a bit more about the, you know, who would fit in these kind of roles. Well, Ruth mentioned the people who are motivated by impact. I would say it's also people who are who have a lot of empathy, who can, you know, put themselves in other people's shoes, who can be very open-minded to understand other ways of thinking, people coming from completely different backgrounds, speaking different languages, not only in terms of the specific language, but, you know, other terms to refer to the same thing. Often I find that it takes a long time for negotiations or just partnerships and engagement to build in, because we're probably talking about the same thing in different terms. So being able to, step out of your kind of comfort zone, be very adaptable and relationship oriented, it's also quite key.
All right, I think I'm taking over now. I'm Karina Ardendrag. Thank you all for answering Team 1. We have Anna for Team 2, and Rima's going to put that question in the chat. What are your top tips for applying for knowledge exchange and community engagement role? What sort of example and skill should an applicant mention? And after we'll have Anna, any one of you will be able to add more information. Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Karine. I think Andrea just talked about empathy. So, and the focus on relationships and someone who is able to build trusting long-term relationships. And that comes through when you interview someone and you ask them about their track record or you reach out to their references. So, like, if I'm to hire someone, I want someone who is collaborative, someone who's like very effective in working at multicultural, diverse teams. These days, we work hybrid or remote. So, someone who is like effective in a flexible team environment. I don't have everyone on my team has their depth of knowledge, but everything that we do spans many things. So I'm not necessarily hiring someone who's like an expert on X specific topic, although we value, that each team member brings their topical expertise. I'm looking for someone who has demonstrated sort of their ability, their effectiveness at working in collaborative team environments to move projects forward in a timely manner. So a good communicator, really strong oral and written skills is critical. Someone who knows how to manage conflict, because when we're working in these sorts of settings, you'll have people with different expectations, timelines, cultures. So someone who is very skilled at using empathy and their interpersonal abilities to manage conflict. It doesn't mean avoid conflict. Working through conflict in ways that are healthy, and that's really hard. That's a tough one. I think in every organization, in any job, we will find conflict naturally emerges, but finding people who are skillful and at the end of the day, someone also who can deeply listen. You want people who can really listen to others, receive feedback, and act on that feedback. So a lot of, I would say, really around your social and emotional intelligence, coupled with, bringing what specific, maybe technical skill set. Maybe you're a data scientist, or maybe you're really good at social media or communication, or whatever it is, depends on the job. That's important. But all of these other things in the end will weigh out more for me, because I can train you up in sort of the technical skills.
Thank you. Very interesting aspect. Andrea, Kadidia, Ruth, does any one of you would like to add something for this specific team?
I can add, but it would dovetail into the next part. So is that okay? Okay. So yeah.
I'm moving to that very soon, but yeah.
Okay, sure. Well, I just wanted to then echo some of what Anna was saying in terms of the interpersonal skills. Many people call them different things now. Some people have said soft skills in the past. Some people have said durable skills. My colleague yesterday at California State University's Long Beach campus said life skills, right? We are needing to be able to have the skills that are transferable, but also inviting to make others feel comfortable, but also, find out what areas of expertise people have without assumption, and letting that relationship build from that baseline. So I would think that interpersonal skills, life skills are extremely important, like Anna mentioned. The feedback part is also critical, but also recognizing bias. So things that we are doing to help students as well as others, as hopefully your hiring committees have anti-bias training or implicit bias training, and then you're able to then start with everyone being reminded of their own biases, but within the selection committee, that is so critical because of the so many different biases that we all have. Thank you.
Andrea, Ruth, go ahead.
Sorry, jumping in. Yeah, so, I just really, I think the other guys have summarized some stuff really well already. I think the only thing I thought that I could add was, as someone who kind of, I went and did my PhD assuming that I would be a researcher, and that was the only thing I ever wanted to be. I just wanted to be a researcher in a university doing geology because I thought it was so cool. Still think it's really cool, but I realized that I didn't want to stay necessarily in that research environment. But I felt pretty lost, and I didn't necessarily know what kind of jobs were out there, and I didn't really understand that I had a whole bunch of skills that could be transferred into all sorts of other areas, that like how we are all now, we're working all these really cool jobs, but I didn't realize that I had all the skills I needed. I just didn't know how to like put that down on an application. So almost kind of from the point of view of someone who might now be sitting as a PhD student wondering what skills do I have that could be transferable, I would say like take some time to have a look at the job applications, look at the people descriptions, like look at the essential criteria that they're asking for. You don't have to apply for every job you look at, but take some time to kind of think, okay, well, I might not have this like super specific qualification they're asking for, like a project management qualification. However, I've been a PhD student or I'm a postdoc, and I actually have all of the stuff that a project manager, that I've already been doing half the things that a project manager might do. I just don't have that by my name. So how can I talk about my experiences, making them relevant for this job application? And certainly what I found now when I've taken the time to kind of think, okay, just stop and have a think about all my skills, I actually realize that I do fit a whole bunch of stuff, but it just takes a little time to kind of think about it. And it's worth putting that work in to kind of, recognize the skills that you have that are totally transferable.
So we already kind of touched into the next theme, so I'm gonna move us into that team. And I have Kadidia and Ruth for this team, but again, we'll be open it. So Riman's gonna put that team into the chat in a second. Application and interview, that's this next theme. What are the key skill individual need to apply for a community engagement and or knowledge exchange role? How can they best acquire this experience in a role within academia? How their skill that needs to be acquired outside of academia? Interviewing for roles can also be a daunting prospect. What sort of attributes should application demonstrate during the interviews? Who wants to go first? Kadidia, I see you're already unmuted. I'm gonna let you take over.
Sure, thank you very much. Ruth actually mentioned a lot of the key skills, listening, and so did Anna, as well as understanding feedback and being able to give it and receive it gracefully. Some of these things you can do, assessment of yourself. You can do maybe some short or long-term goal setting. These are things that have come from like an individualized development plan, which is what many funding sources want for graduate students or postdocs to have during their projects, but you can apply that to yourself, right? You can think about your professional or your experience in the trajectory and then maybe decide what is most important for you short-term and long-term, and then move from there. When it comes to specific jobs, I would definitely do the research about the position, of course, and see about the type of industry that they're in, the partners that they have. I always look at people's board of directors or advisors, their trustees, whoever the governance structure is, but also what things that I've done that align, or is this position aligned with my own values? I think that that's very important. We encourage students to maybe make a list of some companies, maybe just start at 20 and decide, are these companies, do their missions and vision match your values? Because if they don't, then really, why are you applying to this position? Other things are, finding opportunities to do engagement work while you're doing your postdoc or you're doing your undergrad work. You don't have to count experiences that you're actually paid for. Mentoring doesn't necessarily mean somebody is paying. I heard somebody say, your friends aren't paid, right? Your mentors aren't paid. And so these are things that you need to think about in terms of the advice that you're asking and giving and also receiving. So I think that it's important for people to understand what trajectory they'd like to be on and how it would fit with their goals moving forward, because you also are going to want to be able to articulate what you contribute to that particular position. So I'll be quiet for right now.
Thank you. Ruth.
Yeah, that was really helpful. I think when I was thinking about this theme, I kind of honed in on the kind of how to acquire skills a little bit. And I also had a look at, so I think a lot of the people who've registered for the webinar are early career researchers, they're PhDs and postdocs. So I kind of thought about, what practical things could you guys be doing, whilst you're still within the university sphere, what can you take advantage of? And certainly from like the kind of the knowledge exchange and also the wider professional services perspective from working within university is that we actually do quite a lot of training. So for example, my team runs a KE training program that is open to anybody at the university, whether you're professional services or researcher, that talks through how to kind of navigate knowledge exchange within university, but also the kind of attached things. So we go a little bit into policy, we go a little bit into commercialization, there's all sorts of stuff that that training program covers. So I think it's a roundabout way of saying that there will be a lot of opportunities in professional development within your university. So it's worth taking the time to kind of have a little look around and see what's there for you. As a postdoc, we certainly also, I know that we run and are part of postdoc programs for professional development, so they will be there as well. And I think the other thing is that so I often appear at lots of events at the university, and me and my team have been approached quite regularly by people who are doing postdocs, they're early career researchers, and they're thinking about leaving the environment, but they just don't really know what exists out there. And it's kind of looking back and seeing myself in these people is that I had no idea. So I regularly these people who get in touch with me, they come in and they shadow me for an afternoon. They see what it is that I do. They see what it is that teams around me are doing. I take the time to connect them up with other people who are working within professional services with the university. So they have the option to kind of see all sorts of different things. So I would say when it comes to acquiring skills, or if you're trying to figure out your next step, don't be afraid to reach out to the professional services people that you might be communicating with, because we've usually got a whole host of information and help for you. And we're always happy to help as well. So.
Right. Anna, go ahead. I see. You don't need to just unmute yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Karen. So I'm thinking more of my experience working with universities in Latin America. I'm not sure that they necessarily have the same support and infrastructure that maybe you were describing in the UK, but universities and researchers in general in Latin America are much more closely connected to the public sector. There's just this natural fluidity often when you have a smaller pool of topic experts. So my mentors were both, simultaneously content experts and PhDs, and at the same time were serving as vice ministers. And I know a lot of our science advisors play those roles, moving fluidly between the public sector, private sector, and academia. So if you're in a university like that, try to find mentors, research groups, labs that are doing that, and maybe you can volunteer or get the opportunity to sit in on some meetings, to get that experience. So to find someone who is already fluidly moving in these different spaces, a lot of doors will open. If you're in a smaller country, like some of the countries I've worked in, then there's kind of like a who's who, everyone knows everyone, and pretty quickly you'll get pulled into different initiatives and pulled in and invited to provide your expertise as an early career researcher. Because often there's a need for more hands, and not enough people and plenty of work to go around. So being able to kind of generously offer your skills and to find people and partners and allies who are already doing this kind of bridging work is something I would think of. And then also, if your university doesn't provide training, look for training that's available outside. There are groups like TWAS and the II and others that provide specific trainings for early career scientists and scientists from the Global South on science diplomacy, on transdisciplinary approaches. We have free trainings available online on both of those topics, which are really all about boundary spanning. And I'm sure there are many, many other resources out there. So I would say look beyond, find opportunities to get virtual and in-person training. But at the end of the day, having that, I think I would say in-person, like real world experience is most valuable. Like the courses are good, do the virtual training. I'm not saying don't do that. We're here in a virtual environment. That's wonderful. But this kind of work is really about practice. It is a practitioner field. It's not something about theory. It's not about writing papers. It's about how do we learn the practice of being in these bridging spaces. And so finding other people who are skillful at doing that and trying to connect with them, I think could be really helpful at this early career stage.
And I would just add, thank you so much, Anna. That was excellent advice. That communication is really important. So communication is something that is not, I think, intuitive in terms of the sciences, but having the interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary approach in terms of being able to communicate your science, your research, your goals, etc., is important for people who aren't familiar or understanding of what exactly it is that you may have studied or what your dissertation or thesis really means. So being able to communicate those things to broader audiences to draw in how the community would be affected, how these pathways that you took are available for others, et cetera, and what it actually does to the community or how it impacts the community or communities is something that is very important for people who aren't familiar with your particular area.
And just to finalize there, I know we'll move into the last theme, but very briefly, I resonate with a lot of what the others just said. And actually, from my experience and being somebody who's very risk averse, to be honest, I tried to put myself into situations of exposure and kind of this I don't know how to call them, low risk experiments, if you will. So looking for pilots for small projects, for small independent consultancy projects, or reaching out to an organization, an NGO that I can volunteer my time with. I mean, ultimately, it all became into a point where I ended up being an activist, surprisingly, even to myself. But it was like this little by little process that felt like safe stretches, so that if you start incrementally, it builds up your confidence. It allows you to think and feel how you, if you resonate with this type of activities or not, so that it doesn't feel like, this huge career pivot, which could turn out to be that way, but that's not necessarily the one and first step that you need to take right away.
All right, I'm moving into the team number 4. And I have Anna and Andrea for that team. But again, we'll be happy to hear feedback from the other panelists. What the employment landscape really like for knowledge exchange and engagement? How should individual take immediately extreme factor and uncertainty, which are outside of their control, into account when they're looking or applying for a role? And what are the emerging opportunities? Anna, Andrea, who would like to take it first?
I can have a first go, if that's okay. Well, when thinking about this, I was considering, a couple of changes in the landscape. One of them is very much finances and political. So we're in a moment now where research and science is at somewhat of a crisis. There's less confidence in science, there's less support for science, and hence just the overall sector is feeling like things have to change one way or another. The other kind of change that I see happening is that, sort of regardless of that financial or political change, I see that our roles are starting to look more into systems thinking, into what I was mentioning earlier about approaches that are linked to transdisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, thinking about how to build more equitable partnerships. And with the limited resources that we've got, how can we maximize that? How can we amplify the effect and the impact of science in real life and achieve development and international development kind of outputs? So I would say within a field that is in transformation, it takes, well, first of all, a lot of courage and resilience, of course, and we have to acknowledge that. It's been quite difficult for a lot of people, particularly, I would say, in the US, but certainly in the UK as well, with universities having more constraints right now. So it is about identifying and diversifying opportunities. It's the moment to be very curious about what other pathways are there, what other opportunities are there, and looking into, as I said in my introduction, how careers are really not linear, how to become this kind of hybrid specialist. So double down on the skills that you've got, and definitely always think about building from your own strengths. It's always very difficult if you have a list of, these 10 skills that I don't have, and I need to fill all of these gaps. That feels terribly daunting for me. But if on the flip side, I think about all of these skills and the strengths that I do have, what is this useful for? Who is this useful for? Regardless of all of the changes that I was mentioning earlier. So yeah, I'll leave it there just to kick this off.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. So I think that the field, well, generally, the world is in a tough spot right now. Let's just put it like that. We're not going to sugarcoat it. Like, this is a tough spot, and yet the issues, the challenges that we're facing, and the types of research and the work that everyone who's here today does is more important than ever before. So on one hand, there's, a rise in the urgency, a rise in the necessity for people who have skills in the earth sciences and environmental sciences, and who also have a passion and interest in serving beyond. And at the same time, there are forces moving the opposite direction, as Andrea mentioned, reductions in science, increases in defense spending, sort of the pendulum moving in a direction that many of us would wish that it was not. So I think the first thing, and Kadidia said this really well early on, networking. Like, jobs don't just, once in a while you kind of land a job, but often it's because of like who you know, someone shared a job posting, like have you developed relationships? So as you think about where you would like to be in a year or two, work actively to build relationships in those areas. Go to those meetings, go to those conferences, cold call. Some of the people who are on my team now are people who cold called me 6 years ago and just were like, hey, let's connect. I'd love to learn about your work. And then I hired them on this little project, and now they're some of my full-time staff members. Like, don't be afraid to reach out and find leaders in the space that you would like to be in. Like, I think that's important, is like, as an individual, start like visualizing what is that dream job, like where do I want to be in 5 years, and start walking in that direction, even if it seems daunting. Start finding a few people, send those emails. If you write to 10 people and only one response, that's okay. Like, forget about the rest of them, keep going on that one person. Some of us are here on the screen, maybe. I'm sure any of us would be happy to follow up and talk to y'all about what are potential next steps. And the other piece that I see that's growing, science communication as a demand and as a field is growing at the same time as there are challenges. And also, science diplomacy is just exploding as a field. And the demand for people sort of working in the international multilateral space, at the same time as there are major challenges like with the UN system possibly becoming bankrupt, there is also still at the same time a major rise in like the environmental multilateral space. Just this week, myself and my team are here actively participating in the Convention on Biological Diversity. There's scientific subsidiary, there's subs to the subsidiary body for scientific and technical advice, and it's like a tremendous opportunity for early career scientists to get engaged. So I think there's not one solution, right? There's not like one linear career path, as we've said from the beginning, and now that's true maybe more than ever. But I do think that there are a huge amount of opportunities to bring your skills forward, and we need to start to find people who are maybe already walking in that direction and ask them, how can they open doors for you? How can they bring you into collaborations and partnerships and start to meet the right people? The one thing I'll mention is that we at the II have been working very actively to build skills and to also build a demand from governments for science advisement. So science advisors, which are very common in the global north, are not common in the global south. And so we have developed our science, technology, and policy, what we call our STEP fellowship program, where early career scientists, usually postdoctoral level, are placed in government agencies, could be from municipal through national or even intergovernmental agencies, and the private sector, and they receive 2 years of training in science diplomacy, leadership, communications, negotiation. So, and many of these are scientists who want to serve their countries. They want to serve in different ways that are not in academia. They're passionate, they're really smart, they have tons of skills, and they're looking how to gain these skill sets that take them into this next stage. And I see them now. Some of our former fellows are now like advisors on climate change to the Brazilian government. That's one example, or advisors in the different governments. And so we as an institution are actively trying to open those career pathways. And also, I think early career people, like many who are on the call today, can also, start to just walk in that direction and find allies. Like try to find groups and organizations around the world that are actively trying to shift the landscape and to make those possibilities, those trainings, and those opportunities happen. So I'll leave it there.
Karen, I just wanted to add on to Anna's excellent advice for people who are looking for the different member organizations or societies, things like the American Geophysical Union. Depending on your area, it's an international, but it is US based, but there's 40% international participation, and they have their annual meeting every year, and it's the entire Earth system sciences. It's not just one area. But if you were more interested in, for instance, the American Meteorological Society, then there's something that is more related to meteorology or atmospheric sciences. But these are examples of membership societies that people can join. They have volunteer committees. They have activities and professional development for early career. They have ways for people to get involved and to then build your capacity and your resume so that you can feel more confident about stepping into those things. But don't forget to look at the volunteer opportunities you've had as experiences and not as something that, oh, I wasn't paid for it, it doesn't count. Yes, it does count. You're building relationships, and that is what counts.
All right. So I'm gonna open it to all four of you and ask if I know we kind of finished all our team and we heard some great advice of these different teams that we had. I'm wondering for the kind of last minute, do you have anything else you would like to add or any additional information, additional advice you would like to add before we move into the breakout rooms? Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to flag, and I put it in the chat because it's really timely, that I haven't mentioned this at all, but the Belmont Forum, which I am also the co-chair and we host, it's a global consortium of science funding agencies on global environmental issues. And just this week, probably in the next, maybe today or tomorrow, I think we're actually launching a call for applicants to the Advancing Leadership Program. So please take a look at that. This will be a program all around transdisciplinary leadership skills. It's a fantastic program, and we're actually looking for TD pairs, we're calling them. So a transdisciplinary researcher paired with a societal actor to go through the training program together. Fantastic opportunity for early career researchers. We're looking for people across the career spectrum to go into this inaugural first cohort of the training program, which will be launched tomorrow.
That is awesome. And all this information is in the chat, so make sure you go to the chat to check all the links. I already saw additional links coming through, so feel free to see them. All right, I'll let Rima go.
So thank you so much for such an awesome Q&A and panel discussion.